Hi everyone, AedanStarfang here, and I wanted to do something that I had talked about a few videos ago. There's a filmographer and artist named Dan Bell, who's most famously known for his Dead Malls and Other Dirty Room series. And he used to do this little thing called Quiet Time on his Filmmaker channel, where on a night like this, he would do a stream or upload a video just narrating creepy, spooky past instances. And I thought, that's a good idea. That's a good idea to drive engagement on a smaller channel where people they don't have to do anything but just listen and, So I thought I would give that a try. So I have a few things I want to tell. The first was a story I relayed onto Reddit. I think it was on two different subs. One was Let's Not Meet, and I can't remember what the other one was. No Sleep is like the fan fiction, fake, creepypasta bullshit. But it was adapted into a narration by two YouTubers. I think one of them was called Banana Ketchup. I remember that name because it just sounds so funny, Banana Ketchup. And then the other one, I think her name was Miss Fearsome. I think she's done collaborations with Mortis Media and other people, so she's pretty well known. And it was something about, I think the title was something like, can an entire building count as a Let's Not Meet? And it got removed because the moderator said it didn't meet the criteria. I wanted to update on that first because I had spoken with my parents. This is years ago. Spoken with relatives who had stayed there with us at the time. Got in contact with classmates that lived there with me. So it wasn't like some big... So I had described it based on memory. It was like some triangulated formation of buildings in the middle of nowhere. That is not the truth. Before everybody freaks out and says, "You're a liar, you made it up." This happening was at this point now just over 30 years ago. It was like 1990 or 91. So I was either 6 or 7, maybe just a little bit older than that, barely, at the time. And even at the time of relaying the story, it was almost 30 years ago. And my memory is not 100% one for one. You see things, as a kid, because I was a kid when it happened, and you mix things up with dreams and with fiction. So I am setting that story straight. So that was here in Utah. It was on base housing, apartments. It wasn't a triangulated row of apartments. It was literally like a cluster of apartments. Like 1, 2, 3. And I think the fourth one was on the side, facing the street. Now, in my memory, I remember, it seemed like the drive to get there took a long time. Well, when you're a kid, you're impatient. And I think it was probably like a 10, 15-minute drive, because you had to drive from any of the 3 hill gates This is Hill Air Force Base. And then follow the disused train tracks, because now the area is completely different now. And there was like a meadowy, fieldy area around it, but it wasn't like a forest or woods. It was just a field. So that was the first thing I wanted to correct, the first discrepancy. Second one, the janitor guy, Harold, I don't even remember if that was his name. I think I might have just said that because I couldn't remember. There was no giant tricycle. It was actually my dad's motorcycle, because he bought that first thing when we moved to Utah, back to the States. And that was one of the reasons why he was adamant about us moving out of there and into a house, because, you know, teenagers lived there and would ask about his motorcycle, and he was paranoid that they would somehow hotwire it and steal it or go joyriding. Oh, I just nearly tripped to my death. But it was my dad's motorcycle, because out playing around it, I guess I wanted to be put on it. And in hindsight from the story, the custodian guy was like, you know, either just really old, so I can't remember how old he was, or mentally, intellectually disabled. So he picked me up, plopped me up onto it. I wasn't scared, and I remember this feeling. People might say, well, that was 30 years ago. You can't remember this detail, that detail from that one. I remember getting on that motorcycle even when I was a teenager and feeling uncomfortable that if it fell on my legs, it was going to crush my legs. Because I'm a 5'9.5" adult male, and my legs, my feet, at full grown, could barely touch the holsters, the little, you know, the pedals to bolster myself up, or the kickstand. So, and one time when I was big enough to climb up on it, I played on it and knocked it over and broke part of it. I think one of the brake handles or something, and I never did that again. So yeah, there was no giant tricycle. I don't know where I got that from. It was from Killer Clowns from Outer Space, or something else I saw, and I was misremembering that. It was not some secret, reclusive apartment. It was just some apartments. I don't know the name of it. It was there in Hill Air Force Base. They're probably gone now. It was base housing. And it was my dad's motorcycle. And my freaking out, and I can remember it because many times since then that I've done that, not in the last 20 years, but I remember the feeling of, if it falls on me, it's going to crush me. And that's what I was afraid of. I wasn't afraid of the guy. I was afraid of being crushed by this like 200-pound vehicle. So there's that. I don't have any pictures, unfortunately, of the building. Maybe if people live there on Hill Air Force Base, Utah, from like 89 to 92. I'm not sure how many family units they had there, whatever they called it, because it wasn't base dormitories like for active duty. It was just like for, you know, an active enlistment member and like their civilian family members, you know, wife and kids. So if that rings a bell and you want to comment or share, feel free, but that's what it was. I don't know where I got the idea of it being, like I said, memory is a funny thing, because there's people you could have grown up with and spend a decade away from, and it's almost like they don't know who you are, or you don't know who they are. Even it was like, well, we grew up together, we knew each other for the first 10 years of our lives, and now, well, it just happens. Memory changes when you're not actively thinking about someone or something. You're not actively retracing it in your mind. Those memories do start to dull, to fade. So I just wanted to get that out of the way and clear that up. So before anybody attacks my post or my video and calls me a fraud and a fake no sleep submitter for attention, that's not the case. Because if I was going to submit something for a scary story for attention, they're working on this house awfully late at night. Don't you think I would submit something way scarier? Like, say, the janitor was a pedophile, serial child abductor and cannibal, and he pulled out from his custodian overalls a large pair of shears and proceeded to chase me around the building with it. Like, don't you think I would have done something a bit more crazy than that? I think the most craziest part about that story was saying how it was like in a triad shape. I've never seen a cluster of apartments like that. Except, well, in California by the Antelope Valley Mall in Palmdale, there's some apartments, condos that are laid out kind of like that. If they're still there, but they're like clustered. There's like dozens of them. Palmdale, California, by the way. Yeah, because like the story is creepy. It is a scary story. It is a creepy story. But it's not like the most no sleep thing. Before anybody wants to think that. Maybe I'll walk the long way home, so I have more time to spin my yarn, so to speak. There's some urban decay over here. So they haven't even started building the townhomes over here yet. It's supposed to be an all gated community. Oh, they have the fence still erected. So that's something. If that means anything. This place used to be I think it was a Chevron gas station back in the day. It was a Texaco back in the day. We'd walk up here and get candy. Little candies and sodas and whatever. Now it's like, ugh, don't let your kids drink that shit. Seriously, it completely ruined my teeth. There's that storage facility down there that Beverly was talking about. Former Mayor McFarland, she was talking about how it's a rat's nest. I'm sorry, but spiders freak me out, but the idea of a fucking rat running up my leg and biting me, or ugh, no thank you. Oh, they're working on this road, aren't they? Okay. Guess I'll turn here. I'll pick up where I left off after I leave the suburb. Of course, all this is going to be edited. I just don't want to make a lot of noise. And people from the Sunset Group, your weirdo administrator is walking by. What kind of lights are those? Kind of weird for it being spring. It was like Bangater's garage. Big old frickin' huge thing. They're like, oh, this is Jay, the group leader, the cult leader. I hate this fucking... Train tracks are supposed to be over there. Presumably. I hate the way this street is laid out. Like you'd think you go that way to find the train tracks, and then nope. So stupid. That's not terrifying. That sound. All these portables. Because they're taking the school down and rebuilding it. I need to see if I can get permission to film these days before they do start to tear it down. Good riddance. Terrible fucking school. Terrible memories. Terrible, terrible, terrible. Okay, so my first quiet time story is actually my story. Fucking kids leaving branches and shit so people can trip on them. Well, you know you're officially old when... So my first quiet time story is actually my cousin's story, which is actually his friend's story. I know it already sounds like, I know a guy who knows a guy whose cousin works at Disney, but bear with me. So my cousin Zarin has this friend, I think they're still friends, it was back when he was in high school. I'm trying to remember, I don't think, it wasn't his friend's Todd. It wasn't Todd, it was some other kid. The fuck was his name? I'm just gonna call him Zach because I can't fucking remember. So it was Zach and his friends who live in Layton, and they all went to Northridge. So they were all in like, what year was this? 2001, 2002, so they were actually no, it was either 2003 or 2000. Wait, no, I was in high school, they were in junior high. Duh. Okay. I was in Northridge, they were in Layton High, or not High. Fucking North Layton Middle School, or Junior High, or whatever it's called. The one across the street from Walgreens. God damn, my memory is just all over the place. Okay, so it was like 2001, 2002. I was in high school. I was either 17 or 18. So I was either like the beginning of 11th grade or the beginning of 12th grade. Because I can't quite remember, because I know it was either 2001, 2002, and they were in junior high, like 8th grade, I think. It was either 7th or 8th grade. I think it was 8th grade. And yeah, so his friend Zach, the one whom is the main character in this story, who this happens to, is having a sleepover with some other friends. Zarin was not among them because I'm trying to remember what Zarin was doing. Might have been spending that summer with his dad or camping or who knows what. He might have had summer school. I can't remember. So Zach and like 3 other friends, 2 other guys, plus his younger brother. I'm going to call his younger brother Jake. Zach and Jake. And it doesn't matter what the other 2 guys' names are because they weren't friends with Zarin anyway. So they all plan this sleepover, and it's in a suburb near the mall, near the Layton Hills Mall. If you like, you leave the mall where the Wendy's is, or the McDonald's, and you go through, across the street where that church is. It's in one of those suburbs. It's drastically changed now, but back then they used to have kind of like a, around the perimeter of the property, there was like still lots of trees, like it used to be an orchard or just a wooded area. And at the time of this story, Zach's family didn't have any fencing around their house. It was like one of those fairly recently built, at least as of 2001, 2002. It was relatively new, because it was built in 95. It would only be about 5 years old, 6 years old, so relatively new. One of those ivory home type things. I don't know if it's necessarily an ivory home, but you know what I'm talking about. Those houses are all over fucking Utah. It's not a townhouse, but it's like a 3-level split house or something. There's like a very top upstairs, a middle floor where you walk in, and there's like the kitchen. Then you go down the stairs to a family room, and then you can go down some more stairs to a basement area. There's a garage, that type of deal. So at the time of the story, they didn't have any fencing around the house. So this house is like abandoned. No one lives here anymore. There's no signage saying it's for sale or anything. But there were people living here. I'd like to film there before the city knocks it down. So they set up like a little tent, which I remember, it was 1995, very expensive. I know his mom, Zach's mom, was angry because she didn't want them using that tent and camping stuff because it was expensive. It was still relatively new because they got it in like 97 or 96. And it's the type you could take and actually camp out in like Alaska or like the Arctic or whatever. And so she was already mad because she had to like dig through the crawl space and pull it out. And she's like, if I went through and did all this, you're gonna use that tent. I didn't pull it out for nothing. So they're all excited. And I have a sleepover, blah, blah, blah. And during the day, Zach's doing whatever during the day. And then probably around 5 p.m., his friends show up. Their moms, their parents drop them off. After having had dinner first. And, they're like watching TV or movies or whatever. And they have their, super soakers or whatever. Because it's like, I want to say it was like July or August, so it's not quite back to school, but it's not like right after school got out, so it's fairly hot out. So they go out, they're super soakering each other and playing, letting off steam. And one of them notices kind of like at the corner of the property, because the property isn't huge, but it's not small. Because where they position, I should have stated this when I was describing the tent. When they were setting up their tent, they put it kind of like very close, as far away from the backyard while still being on the property. So imagine from here to that light is the perimeter of the yard. That light is where the tent is, where they set it up. Now imagine those red lights over there. That's like a couple hundred yards into the orchard wooded area over there. So one of the friends is stopping. He's right there by the light, right there where the tent is, and is looking over there at the red light and is nudging Zach and the other friend and saying, there's like a guy over there. And he's reflecting in the light. And they're like, what? Obviously, they think he's full of shit. He's making it up. So they're looking. And sure enough, there's like this silhouette, like this, just, he described it as a black silhouette. And when they have this big flashlight, right? So they shine it on them. And normally if you illuminated someone, even from a distance, you could see some humanoid features like a face. All they saw was the eyes reflecting, kind of like how a cat or an animal's eyes would reflect. So they kind of just, oh, whatever. It's probably a crackhead or a teenager or a homeless. At first, I think they thought it was one of their older siblings. So they're like, whatever. They're probably they knew we were having a sleepover. They're trying to spook us. So remember that positioning from that red light to that, the other light with the tents. That's probably 700 feet or 5 yards or 6 yards or something like that. A good distance away, but close enough where you could definitely know that someone was there. So they all decide to go into the tent and read comics or magazines or talk shit or whatever. So they're in there for like half an hour, 45 minutes. One of them has to go to the bathroom. And they're like, well, I'm not going to go pee outside. I'm going to go use the toilet. So they go outside. The shadow, because he's just curious to look, and sure enough, the shadow is closer. Like a good 10 feet from where it originally was, that much closer, because it looks bigger. And he's like, back in the tent, shoving his head in, hey, everyone get out here, that thing, that guy, that shadow guy, whoever, I don't think it's a teenager, might be a bum, might be a homeless, whatever, is even closer now. So they're looking, and they're all like freaked the fuck out, because sure enough, the eyes are glowing, reflecting like a cat's eyes. And so like, well, I'm not gonna stay in the tent if there's like some guy out there. I don't know, the mindset among the 4 guys, the kids, was, even if it is, obviously they didn't think it was like a monster, but even if it's just a person like a bum or a drug addict or a someone in a messed up state or a drunk or whatever, they're acting really weird, so they didn't want to contend with that. So they grabbed a few of their things, because this is 2001, 2002, so there wasn't any smartphones, there wasn't anything, most of everything kids want to do was inside the house, everything electronic. So they went back inside, and they slept in the den that night watching TVs. So that's where they stayed the rest of the night. They locked all the doors, made sure all the doors were locked, shut it. Later in the night, because Zach had gotten, riled up from it. All the lights are off. They're all tucked into sleep. He's gotten up to either get a glass of water or go to the bathroom, because the kitchen back door faces where the tent was set up. So looks directly into the field or that wooded area. And, you would have to pass by that to go into the kitchen. So he's stopping and looking, and says it looked to him like there was movement in the tent, but then he couldn't tell if it was wind or not, because he's trying to see, and flickered on and kept the porch light on. Didn't see anybody run out of the tent or any shapes around it, and you didn't see the shadow out there anymore. But it's like, yeah, it looked like there was movement by the tent, but then it could have been an animal, could have been, because people have dogs and cats, and foxes are in the area and whatever, and I think there might have been a breeze, so that could have been it. So whatever, he just makes sure the doors are locked, windows are shut, locked, porch lights on, gets his glass of water, goes back to bed. So in the morning, his mom is up, because I think she did like accounting or something from home, and saw them all asleep in the den, saw the tent was still up, and she was mad. She was pissed. She woke all of them up. She's like, why aren't you sleeping in the tent? So he's trying to explain, we saw the shadow. I don't know if it was a, homeless guy or a drug addict or drunk or blah blah, and the eyes were reflecting, and his mom is just like immediately calling bullshit. She's like, it's probably some teenager from the high school messing with you, and you let him get inside your head, so he was trying to get to you and he succeeded. And he was like, well, what about the eyes? They were glowing like a cat. And she rubbed that off. She brushed it off like, oh, he probably had those contact lenses that you can buy or whatever. And like none of the kids were really buying that, because like, why would you go out of your way to do that? Just to be kind of like disturbing, like to be creepy, but not really, make your presence known. Just kind of stand there from a distance for like almost an hour or more. It just wasn't really adding up for anybody. So, she was mad. So she went out there because they're like, well, we're not going out there. So she was mad. So she grabbed the dog because the dog needed to go out anyway. And she went out there because they had taken some things and left him in the tent. So she unzipped it, looked in. She got even angrier. She called them out, or called Zach and his brother out. And she's like, this is like a, $2,500 or $1,200 camping suite, and there's footprints all over it. There's tracks all over it. There's dirt and dust, and broken leaves and branches and twigs and crumbs from the food left over in it, because she didn't want them eating it anyway. And she said it looked like there were animals chasing each other, or someone just stomping on everything, or searching through things. And they were like, no, like we didn't have, like we had food, but we brought them in with us, so ants wouldn't get to it. And like we were just laying there reading our books before we got too freaked out, went inside. And, because they came out when she called them out, and then they were like, look at the footprints. Those aren't, and they compared each of them, the kids compared their footprint to that, and it was an adult man's footprint. So she was kind of like, okay, this is weird. This is creepy. So she told them to all just go back in and watch TV, whatever. She told the dad, and he went in and looked. So they were both kind of freaked out. Like, okay, there's like adult man rummaging through our tent at night. So, long story short, nobody really knows who or what that was with the reflective eyes, but they got a fence installed, I think, later that week or later that month. So, yeah. For Quiet Time, that was the tale of the creepy cat shadow man. And I'll try to think of another one from my memories or from other ones I've heard, and tell those ones. Until next time.